Good evening, good morning when you happen to see this video. Continuing with the reading of Mr. Bert Hellinger's book, A Philosophy of Being, Rising in Love, published by Hellinger Sciencia in 2008. Fate. We feel guilty if we are favored at the expense of others by a destiny that we are unable to prevent or change. For example, a child is born, but his mother dies. He is undoubtedly innocent. No one would think of taking him to task for it. Nonetheless, the knowledge of his own innocence can't release him because he sees his life fatefully entwined with his mother's death. Therefore, he will never be free of the pressure of guilt. Another example. The tire on a man's car is punctured while he is driving. He skids and collides with another car. The other driver dies, whereas he is saved. Although he is innocent, his life is still interwoven with the death and suffering of others. In spite of his innocence, he carries guilt. A third example. A man recounts that his mother, while pregnant with him, traveled to a field hospital at the end of the war to bring his father home safely. During their flight, they were threatened by a Russian soldier whom they killed. Even though they acted in self-defense, the parents and the child, too, carried the burden of guilt because they lived and the soldier died. With such fateful guilt and innocence, we experience ourselves as powerless in every way, which makes it almost unbearable. If we only had our own guilt to bear, instead of carrying the burden of the past, we would also have power and influence. Here, however, we come to realize that for good, just as for bad, we are in the hands of an unpredictable destiny which, independent of our being, good or bad, presides over life and death, salvation and unhappiness, well being and ruin. This impotence with regard to fate is so horrifying for some people that they would rather throw away their unearned happiness or life than accept it as grace. Often, such people will try after the event to bring some personal merit or guilt into play in order to avoid feeling that they are at the mercy of such undeserved salvation or guilt. A person who gains personal advantage at the cost of another will often restrict this advantage, give it up, or throw it away. Such actions might take the form of suicide, becoming sick, or committing a deed for which they must be punished. Such solutions have to do with magical thinking and are a childlike form of dealing with unexpected luck and undeserved happiness. If we look closely, we may see that such self inflicted restrictions do not diminish misfortune or sorrow, but instead they increase it. A powerful example of this dynamic is the child whose mother died in childbirth, and so she restricts the scope of her life or even commits suicide. Now, the mother's sacrifice was in vain, and in a way, she is held accountable for the child's death as well. What a difference it would make if the child could say instead, "Dear mother, even though you have lost your life because of my birth. It must not be in vain. In remembrance of you, I will make something of my life. Then the pressure of the fateful guilt becomes a driving force for a life that allows for actions that others would not have the strength to carry out. Then the mother's fate can have a good effect beyond her death, bringing about reconciliation and peace. For all of us, there is a pressure to balance out what fate presents. According to what we have received, we want to give back something of equal value. And when this is not possible, we try at least to deprive ourselves of something. But our little ways lead nowhere, as fate is not moved by our expectations or by our reparations or atonements. Humility. It is our own innocence that makes fateful guilt so hard to bear. If we were guilty and were to be punished, or were innocent and were to be saved, then we could assume that destiny is a moral order. We could assume that it is subordinated to rules open to influence or manipulation through our own guilt or innocence. However, if we are saved independent of our guilt or innocence, while others, irrespective of their guilt or innocence, perish, then we are confronted with our lack of influence and our powerlessness to manipulate destiny through guilt or innocence. The only path left then is to submit and entrust ourselves to a greater force, be it for better or for worse. Such a stance emanates from a place I call humility. It allows us to accept our lives and our happiness as long as they last, regardless of the price others have to pay for this. In the same way, it allows us to consent to our own death and heavy fate when it is our turn, irrespective of our guilt or innocence. In this humility, I know that it is not me who determines my fate, but rather fate that decides over me, fate that picks me up, carries me, and drops me according to laws that I cannot and must not try to uncover. This humility is the response that is in accord with fateful guilt and fateful innocence. It makes me equal to the victims. It allows me to honor them, not by reducing or throwing away what I have gained at their expense, but by taking it with gratitude in spite of the high price, and then by sharing it with others. Thus far, I have talked primarily about guilt and innocence and giving and taking. Guilt and innocence have many faces and they work in many ways. Human relationships are built on the interplay of different needs and orders, trying to assert themselves in various ways of experiencing guilt and innocence. The other ways of experiencing guilt and innocence will be elaborated on in the discussion about the limitations of conscience and the orders of love. Now, let us consider order and abundance. And I don't know. Okay, let's continue with order and abundance. Order is the way in which the many can interact. It is home to fullness and diversity. It is living in exchange, unifies what is dispersed, and gathers it as fate decrees. Therefore, it's home to movement. It shapes the transient in a form that gives hope for continuity. Therefore, its home to permanence, still as a tree, before it falls, will shed the fruit that is its future. So order keeps in tune with time. Therefore, its home to change and to renewal. Orders that are living will resonate with life as they unfold. They drive us on and force their discipline on us through longing and through fear. In setting boundaries, they give us space. The space in which they live contains all sides of our separations. The limits of conscience. We are aware of conscience in the same way that a horse has a sense of its rider, or a helmsman on a ship takes his bearings from the stars. Alas, the horse has many different riders, and many different helmsmen look toward many stars. The question is, who guides the rider, and in which direction does a captain steer his ship? The answer. The student turned towards his master. Tell me what freedom is. Which freedom? Asked the master. The first freedom is foolishness. It resembles the horse that, gnawing, throws off the rider only to feel his reins pulled much tighter thereafter. The second freedom is regret. It resembles the helmsman who chooses to stay on the sinking ship rather than climbing into the lifeboat. The third freedom is understanding. It comes after foolishness and regret. Understanding resembles the need that sways with the wind. Because it is pliable, it can bend and stand upright again after the wind subsides. The student asked, Is that all? To this the master responded, Some people think that they themselves are searching for the truth within their own souls, but it is the greater soul that thinks and searches through the souls of individuals. Like Mother Nature, this greater soul can afford a lot of errors as each false player is effortlessly replaced by a new one. But if we allow this greater soul to think in us, we may be granted certain freedoms, surrendering to the current. Joint forces may carry us to the other side of the river. And I finish this video here. After having read the answer, we will continue with guilt and innocence in another video. Thank you very much.